welcome to the regular meeting of the Orange Board of Finance Budget Workshop. Today's Thursday, February 13th. Sorry, I gotta talk loud. Oh, sorry. Well, I'm not going to start over. So we'll call the meeting to order at 7:09. And I'd like to start by having everyone introduce themselves, beginning on my right.
PJ Shanley.
John Safrelli, Finance Director.
Jen Byers, Superintendent, Amity.
Terry Loomis, Director of Finance at Amity.
Joe Nuzzo, Board of Finance.
Jim Leahy. Pat Romano.
Kevin Houlihan, thank you very much. Item number 2 is public participation. If there's, no, we'll move on to item number 3, presentation of the Amity 2020-2021 budget with Dr. Byers and Terry Loomis. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, now I gotta move, right?
All right. So this evening, I'm here to present the superintendent's budget proposal, and Mr. Leahy, if you can forward to the first slide. So every single budget is built sort of with 2 foundational principles, the first being the mission statement that we have for our students at Amity, and then the second being the Board of Education goals that essentially encompass 3 areas: supportive climates for our students and adults, efficient use of resources, and then improvement in our areas of instruction and student engagement and performance. And so, no, go ahead. And so the Board of Ed mission and goals really act as a guiding principle for all of the decisions that we make. We make sure that that every decision is sort of filtering back to those 2 things. The budget ends up representing the priorities of the board and the needs of the district, but we still try to attend to the fiscal responsibility that we have to the citizens of all 3 of the towns that are part of Amity. And ultimately, in the end, we are always striving for our 3 A's, which is the excellent programming that is the result of a comprehensive middle and high school experience. So we're going to start with the first of the A's, which is going to be our academics. And really the purpose of this is to remind everybody what you are getting when you get an Amity education. Mr. Leahy? Thank you. So first, looking at state assessment performance, whether you're looking at Smarter Balanced results, which would be for our middle school students, or the school day SAT, our science results in grades 8 and 11, or even looking at our health and fitness assessments, you can see that the performance of an Amity student in all cases far exceeds the state average, in some cases almost doubling what the state average is for meeting our standards. Go ahead. In terms of recent accolades, the entire district is the top district in New Haven County, and we are ranked 4th in the state. Our high school is 16th in the state overall, but one thing that I find amazing is it's one of the top 4% of the schools ranked in the entire country. And that is of an analysis of over 22,000 schools. An amazing recognition. We were also School of Distinction last year, as was Amity Middle School Bethany. And you can see that in terms of our middle schools, we're kind of tied pretty much neck and neck for the top 2 schools in New Haven, and then certainly in the top tier of middle schools in the state of Connecticut. Go on. Part of the reason why we're in the top 4% in the United States is because of some of the exceptional learning opportunities we provide for our students. So we have 25 advanced placement classes with almost 900 students enrolled in those AP classes. That's of a student body of about 1,500. We have early college experience classes with UConn, and 93 students enrolled currently in our science research program. On the right-hand side of the slide, this is just a sample of some of the classes that a student can take when they come to the high school. So everything from something very practical, like Know Your Car, which is in our automotive shop, where they go through the basics of car care and car maintenance, to statistics, which is going to be extremely helpful and part of our advanced math classes, to broadcast journalism, where they're able to not only produce broadcast journalism, but they have to do all the research and the work and the writing that goes behind it. We offer 4 world languages in French, Mandarin, Latin, and Spanish. And so these are the reasons why we are one of the best school districts in the state of Connecticut.
Could I ask you a question, or you want to wait till the end? I've got a question on this data, so I can either come back to slide 7 or ask now?
Sure.
Mike,
Didn't know it was off.
I'm happy to take questions during the presentation.
I just want a quick one. Students enrolled in AP, if I take 2 APs, would I be counted twice in the 899?
Yes, so that's not an individual, so those are
Yeah.
all of the enrollments. So yes,
Okay.
we have several students who take 2, 3, even 4 AP classes at one time, and so that would be part of the.
And the ECE classes, what kind of thing is that?
They're early college experience classes, so it's a partnership with UConn,
Uh-huh.
where the course that the student is taking is actually the UConn course, and when it's completed, they have earned a college credit at the end of it.
Yeah, I've heard that some people slide into college and they have
Quite a
half
number
a
of
year
credits.
done.
Yes,
Yeah, which, talk about a saving.
yes.
Doing more with less right there.
So,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Anyone else? Oh, good.
Again, part of our exceptional learning opportunities are the things that occur outside of the regular school day. We have 78 student organizations and clubs. One of the things we pride ourselves on is that these are always student-driven. So if a kid has an interest and they come to us, they are the ones who start the club. They find the faculty advisor, they recruit the members to their club, and then ultimately they build it from the ground up. The clubs can be anything from clubs around social activism to our publications to some of the hobbies that we have. Again, on the right side are some examples. You Matter is a perfect example of one of those student ground up clubs where a student who had been impacted by suicide decided to form a club so that they could address mental health needs and sort of reach out to other students who were maybe feeling like they had a need for self-harm, or to sort of support peers who might have friends who are also feeling self-harm thoughts. Amity Creative Theater is probably one of the biggest clubs that we have, and probably one of the most well-known. Our esports team is a new club that's sanctioned by the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference, and it's an opportunity for students to participate in competitive video gaming. But along with that comes the broadcast journalism, because the games are streamed live, and you actually have kids who are commenting on the game as it's happening, as well as sports management of the people who manage those teams. In our second year, we placed second in the state in the competition in our esports league. So again, just some samples of some of the opportunities our
So these
kids have.
78, some come and go, that type of thing?
They tend
I
to
would-
come and go, but yes,
But some
overall,
would be stable. I think.
most of these are fairly stable right now, yes.
Thank you. Team?
Yep.
Good.
We're very proud of our pre-apprenticeship program that we just established this school year. So this is a joint program between the Connecticut Department of Education and the Department of Labor. And by taking a set of classes that we've identified in manufacturing and in our career and technical education courses, as well as completing their senior service learning program in a manufacturing field, these students can earn 200 pre-apprenticeship hours that would carry with them after graduation into a career in manufacturing. So this year, as we started it, we created the criteria first, and then we looked back at all the kids to figure out how many met the criteria. So we had 12 students qualify for our pilot as we were getting this approved. Moving forward, obviously, it's going to be a part of our program of studies and something that we would talk about as we enroll students into 9th grade and then counsel them up through their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade years.
Not to wear you out, but since this is an educational process, at least for me, maybe everybody here knows this, but did we have a model for this apprenticeship program from some other location? or-
So there are other school districts in the state that do this, but it really just ends up being approved by, there's a representative at the Department of Labor who, once they come down and look at our program, the courses we're offering, kind of the quality of the facilities and what we're teaching, they make the determination as to how many pre-apprenticeship hours our program would earn.
And how, okay, I earned 200 pre-apprenticeship hours. What's next for me?
So for you, you're going to go out into a manufacturing
So like
job.
Sikorsky.
Yes, and then at that point, those pre-apprenticeship hours start to translate into your, I guess, real apprenticeship hours. That would give you the
No, I think
credentials
this is
for that
great.
job.
I think it's great.
Yes, we're extremely pleased
First
with
I've
this.
heard of it.
Jim just retired, so he's looking for something to do.
Oh, okay. Okay, you can go to the
Funny
next
guy.
slide. When you look at our college assessment performance, SATs, you can see that the biggest percentage of our students are somewhere in that 500 to 700 range. And so, for people who sort of wrap their heads around the SATs, we're talking about kids who are sort of in the 1,000 to kind of the 1,400 range, and that's where most of our students are going to be scoring for the
I think the blue
SATs.
is math.
Yep, blue is math, and then the orange is the English.
Oh, okay, yeah, they call it a different name.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep, you can move forward.
good,
Go ahead.
good.
In terms of college entrance, we had 9 National Merit Scholar semifinalists this year, and 15 commended scholars for the class of 2019. So last year, we awarded 163 scholarships. You can see that most of our students, 92% of them, go on to a 4-year school, with a smaller percentage going 2 years or into an alternate path, military career or a gap year.
All right.
I could fill up a slide with exceptional learners, but I wanted to touch on 3. So Mr. Barine is at Amity Middle School, Bethany. He was one of 8 teachers in the country who was selected to go to NASA's Spaceward-Bound Mars. It was a week-long simulation of living on Mars, the learning which he brings back to his students in his tech ed class at AMSB. Vicki Filash is our 2020 Teacher of the Year and a special education teacher at Amity Middle School Orange. And one of our many accomplished students, for example, is Sophia Wang. She is being recognized almost on a weekly basis for an invention that she's made to detect sinkholes before they actually occur. She did this through her science research program. The video link in here takes you to a commercial. Sophia was one of 3 young ladies in the entire world who was selected to receive the first edition of Ms. Monopoly, which recognizes women scientists. And inside the box, rather than Monopoly money, she actually had real cash. So, and she's just brought so much recognition to the school because of this particular invention that she's created with
How
our.
did she get hooked up with sinkholes? We don't have a lot of them in Connecticut, right?
So, no, but it was sort of what
I'm just
happened?
curious.
Something?
Yeah, that's
Her
interesting.
sophomore year in high school, she was she was just learning through her social studies classes and her chemistry class, just about that was when there was that large sinkhole in
Yeah,
Florida.
right.
And then lots of sinkholes started happening, and so she was just moved to, she was in science research. She had completed her first year, which is like an introductory year, and she was looking for a project. And so rather than connect with someone outside of school, we often have kids partner with Yale or researchers who are already established. She decided to pursue this kind of engineering project and started researching and doing her own work. And
It's
she
interesting, because I was thinking Florida when I heard sinkholes.
Yeah.
I was saying,
All the
but
news.
how? Okay, all good.
Kinda fell into it,
Thank
I
you.
encourage people to come up to the podium and talk, because I can't really hear them back there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll,
Not a huge
like,
deal,
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, very good. We'll work on it.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. We're learning.
Okay, move on. So our second A is going to be athletics, and if Mr. Leahy, you can move on to the next slide.
Yes, sir.
So just looking at some of our team accomplishments, last year we had 1 state championship as well as 3 state runners-up. We had 3 SCC team championships, and then several divisional and runner-up teams as well. This fall so far, we've had 5 SCC team divisional championships and 3 league runners-up.
Can you explain what SCC means?
Yes, the Southern
Connecticut
Connecticut
Conference.
Conference.
Okay.
So it's our division that we compete in.
Yep.
You can go on, Mr. Leahy.
Very
Thank
good.
you. Our athletes themselves, we had 1 All-New England athlete last year, 24 All-State athletes, which I think is an incredible accomplishment, and 69 All-SCC athletes. Several coaches recognized as well for their skills and qualities, and so far this fall only, we've already had 5 All-State athletes and 24 All-SCC student athletes.
Good.
And moving on to the final of the A's, which is going to be the arts. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. When we look at our musical arts, we've had 68 students from our middle and high school accepted for our Southern Regional auditions. We have 3 all-state students who are accepted for their auditions. But I think probably the most important thing is that our music students are out in the community. They perform at parades for Memorial Day. They perform at the Orange Tree Lighting Ceremony. Programs like Music in Motion or a Pops concert bring people from the community in, not just parents, but just people who want to come in and hear exceptional music, because that is what we are able to provide. Our visual arts. Our students put on exhibitions throughout our towns, putting on annual exhibitions in Woodbridge as well as Bethany. We do our Empty Bowls event around Christmas time, where students create custom-made pottery bowls. Our culinary students fill them with soup, and all of the proceeds which go to food pantries. We've had several congressional art awards, including a second place, as well as some scholastic art awards.
So that annual exhibition over in Bethany, is that going on now?
Yes, they did
Okay.
just, I just saw it in the student news.
Good, thank you.
And moving forward to our performing arts, again, going back to Amity Creative Theater, but we also have the performing arts in our middle schools. So this is kind of the last run of performances each school has had. Legally Blonde Junior, Aladdin Junior, Dancing at Lunessa was our fall play. Last year's musical, Catch Me If You Can, was nominated for 9 Sondheim Awards, which were basically the state awards for musical performances. It did win for Best Choreography, and in about a month, we will be putting on The Drowsy Chaperone.
Okay.
So the budget process starts sort of in 3 layers. The first with our contractual obligations, most of it being tied to personnel, but we also have contracts that we have to meet for things like our copiers or for our bus transportation. So all of that comes with sort of a predetermined fixed cost to begin with. So we begin with that. The other thing that we have to attend to are federal and state mandates. We have a lot of them. The biggest one being our responsibility to provide special education services, but we also have some other things we have to meet, like our teacher evaluation systems and our state testing requirements. And then finally, we filter in our school and our department requests, and that's kind of how we start with the budget. At that point, we begin a collaborative process, lots of dialogue, big group meetings, small one-to-one meetings, to find efficiencies and savings, to prioritize some of the new requests that come in, and then also to reduce or to combine redundancies that we might see within the budget. And ultimately, that becomes the budget that I recommend to the Board of Education, and that's kind of the point where we're at right now. So the first budget, if you look at the bottom, represented a 3.95% increase from the current
the
1920 budget. But that doesn't actually translate to 3.95% for each of the towns. Because of enrollment, that percentage is doled out slightly differently. And you can see that in the way that the current enrollment occurs, Woodbridge has the highest percentage of the budget responsibility because of enrollment changes. Since the original 3.95%, you can go forward.
Okay, but Woodbridge has the highest increase. They don't
Yes,
have
the highest increase,
percentage.
correct.
Right, okay.
So since the budget book that you all have in front of you was developed, and since the first presentation, we've made some small changes to the budget, namely the elimination of a part-time Chinese teacher at the high school. And then we went back and recalculated the textbook requests based on the assumption that we would get one-to-one devices in 10th grade. So when you have a device, you don't need as many textbooks because you're going to have the students accessing the textbook on their device. We also eliminated some workbooks, and so those adjustments reduce the proposed budget to 3.79%, and that's where we sort of sit right now. But I did just want to clarify that what you have in front of you in your budget book still represents the 3.95. We haven't made those adjustments yet to the documents. So going forward, you can see that the budget is essentially 2/3 tied into personnel, salaries and benefits. It is not a secret that we are a labor-intensive organization, and we have a lot of people tied into running the schools. Special education accounts for about 10% of that budget. Our debt service, about 8%. You can see professional technical services. I pulled out the textbooks because I just wanted to show when, people think of schools, after you think of the students and the desks, a lot of times you're thinking of the textbooks and the resources that kids use. And I just wanted to make sure everybody understands what a tiny, small fraction some of the most ubiquitous things are when they're in a school budget. The 11.97%, that's everything else. So it's copy paper, it's copiers, it's telephones, it's computers, it's technology, it's taking care of the grounds. It's like everything else is located in that 12%. And a lot of times when we look to make reductions, we're usually working in that other, and it's not a very big part of that pie.
Okay.
You can go forward. Yep. So historically, you can see back in 16 to 17, the budget requests were about where the 5-year average was. But for the past 3 years, the budget requests have been lower than the 5-year average over that time. So that sort of paints a story. And Mr. Leahy, if you can go to the next slide, the big part to that is because our contractual increases have been hovering right around 2.4%, with the budget increases coming in, under 2, sometimes dipping down sort of towards that 1 area. This slide only shows 5 years. We can go all the way back to 2014-15 was the last time that the budget request was actually higher than the contractual increases.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've heard some people tell us to do less with more. That's basically what we've been doing since 2014-15, because that's what it means when you when you're going less than the contracts, you're dipping into everything else all the time. You can go forward, please. So this year's budget drivers, we have a couple things that are responsible for the 3.79% increase. The first being just the basic contractual increases, salaries, transportation. We have several things that we need to address in technology. The first being our infrastructure, so literally the wires, the servers. We have, we're a school, and when we were built, we didn't really know what technology was going to be like in the year 2021. At this point, the equipment and the items that we have are literally just insufficient to run everything that we operate. It's not just computers, it's not just smart boards. Our HVAC systems are all technology-based. Our telephones are technology-based. The way we open the door for visitors is based on technology. And we've actually had a couple close calls with what I'll call a catastrophic meltdown. And, when we asked, what happens, there's no backup system. So if the system goes down, it goes down. And if you've been reading the papers, basically since the beginning of the year, a couple of school districts have been hit by some fairly significant technology, we'll call them viruses, but it's a little bit more than that, where the whole district has been offline, sometimes for 2 to 3 weeks, and it's virtually impossible to run. The first computer they restore is payroll, because our entire process of accounting and paying our people is technology-based. And unlike a home computer, we run our servers 24/7, 365 days a year. We are also continuing our one-to-one initiative of providing students their own device so that they can use it as their learning platform. This is really a continuation from what happens in the elementary districts, where our students have one-to-one devices, sometimes as early as 3rd grade. We have currently one-to-one devices for our 7th and 8th grade students, and next year we would be looking to bring it up to 9th and 10th. And then we would roll it out to 11th grade and then ultimately 12th grade in the following 2 years. And then with this, we are looking to increase technology staff by one person. So not only rebuilding the infrastructure and adding the devices, but because of some work that we would like to do with a student help desk, we're able to just add one additional support staff to our tech department. Our textbook requests are a little bit higher this year, in part because as we've put in some new curriculum, it takes a little while for the textbook companies to catch up and actually produce a good textbook. We've been waiting for science books. The next generation science standards were adopted by the state in about, I think, 2014, and we've been waiting until now before we actually have some good books that will support those curricula. So that actually resulted in a higher increase in textbooks. That we try to keep that line relatively flat, but we've deferred some purchases until we have a good book to use. And then we have some additional personnel included in this budget. There are 2 school resource officers that are identified. These would be one resource officer in each of our middle schools, so one up at AMSB, one here at Amity Middle School Orange. This has been something that has been a goal of our security committee, but we also hear from parents who see school resource officers in the elementary school, who see a school resource officer at the high school, and they sort of are curious and wonder why our middle school students don't deserve that same level of safety and security. There's an additional social worker. This is based off of data we have from our recent student health survey that indicates some fairly significant mental health needs amongst our kids as early as 7th grade. And this individual would be shared between the 2 middle schools. And then finally, we have a restructuring of our pupil services coordinator positions. And we would actually be looking to have 2 people in those positions for 10 months as opposed to a single 12-month administrator. And you can move forward. Our debt service, you can see, is going down. This is our current debt service. It does not include the introduction of the new debt that will come on board as a result of the 2019 referendum. That referendum, again, went out to the towns and was approved successfully by the voters. As part of our presentations, we were always very clear on the last slide that there was going to be an impact on our budget if that referendum was passed. And I feel that that's not a surprise to anybody that there's going to be a change in this debt service.
When we say fiscal year and it says 21, does that mean 2021 or 21, 22?
2021.
Thank you.
You can go forward. So initially, the budget request, like way back when we were talking about sort of how we built the budget, started at a 7.17%. As we had our discussions throughout the fall, we were able to drop that down to a 5.03%. Then kind of when we go in that sort of line-by-line detail, that was when we were able to reduce the budget down to the 3.95% that is in your budget book. And if you can go forward, please. Reductions included several positions, including IT support, secretary support, paraprofessionals, a math support specialist for our middle schools. We decided not to replace some of our musical instruments. The field at Amity Middle School Orange really needs to have its drainage redone. It floods and stays flooded quite a lot, especially in the springtime. So what we did is we did postpone some of our the work that we need to do as part of our capital plan. We looked at some items that we could purchase this year, so things like our physics books, which our kids could use immediately. We are purchasing in the current fiscal year. We went down and looked at things like eliminating our assessments in grade 11 because we felt by 11th grade we had a good enough knowledge of our students that we didn't need to give them these standardized assessments anymore. So as many opportunities as we could to bring that budget request down to the 3.95%. And you can go forward. So this is the daily membership, essentially the student enrollment. So you can see that Bethany had a modest change in enrollment from the current year to next year. Orange has no change, and Woodbridge has the increase, and that's why their percentage of the budget increase is going up the most. I also point out that there is a persistent myth that enrollment is always going down. And you can even see that between this year and next year, our enrollment is going up. We simply are not seeing those changes in enrollment that sort of get reported, I would say globally, in newspapers about the state of Connecticut.
Not in the last 2 years, but historically, it's been dropping pretty good.
So,
Yeah.
and I think historically we'll see it moving up.
I think that's probably a change, yeah.
So, and you can go forward, please. And so that is how we sort of arrive eventually again to the 3.79% where we currently sit. And then, you know, we do acknowledge that we returned monies to the town. Literally in January, we delivered checks to the town for the return of funds from the 18-19 budget. And you can see those amounts listed over on the right-hand side. And so if you can go forward. Thank you very much. I appreciate you listening to me and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask if you, in the future, could bring copies of this so we could follow along and make notes? on it?
Absolutely.
It would be-
I'd be more than happy to.
Great,
That's an
thank
easy
you.
ask.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
thought
got-
I'd start off easy.
I got this thing, and I could have at least sent it to all of you today, and it just, it didn't do it. Violation on me. All right.
Oh, that's
I
two.
could tell you whatever I could tell you, but
It's okay.
it didn't happen. All right, so, fair enough. I have some prepared slides. I asked for some information from Amity, Kevin. I don't know if it would be appropriate to do those now and then have detailed questions, or the other way around. You're the chairman.
I think since Dr. Byers just presented, if anybody has questions, we hit that first.
Okay.
That's okay.
You'll excuse my naivete, but the percentage that you put down as special ed, that includes salaries and benefits in special ed, or it's?
The-
No,
It's
the,
like transportation, tuition to out-of-district schools, some of the special, we'll call it instructional resources that the kids need, but the salaries and benefits are
Are in
in
the
the
other-
salaries
okay.
and benefits.
Understood, thank you.
Yes.
Because I think OBOE gives it to us a little bit differently, I think. I have a question about one of the things I have a question about is this population. I had a number here, and Terry, maybe you would be the right person, and it's not that big a deal. 2217, the ADM for next year is based on this year's population, right?
correct.
Okay, so, but I think somewhere in here, I think I remember the number 2195 is the actual number of students for next year.
No,
Well, we won't know that until the summer.
I thought I read in here there was an
21,
2195. It isn't a big deal, I just want to let you know, and it's not a big deal in the slides I'm going to do, but that's a number that
Okay.
will pop up in there, and I thought I got it from here. If I got it wrong, another violation,
We'll
okay?
find it.
Yeah, okay, good.
On this deck,
All right.
which is over-
Kev?
Terry, if I look at page 17, and maybe this was covered in this presentation, just how things get lumped together.
Yep.
The tuition expense compared to what you're forecasting this year is actually up about 800,000 next year, or is that because of new students you know of moving in, so they're accounted for?
Special ed director works with the elementary schools and who will be leaving sixth grade and coming in.
So there is that much coming in.
Anybody who they might know, if they do know this early of anyone moving in the district, or needs that they may anticipate are changing of current students. So it is based on the best information we have at the
No, I get that,
moment.
I just, because
Yeah.
it's a 7, almost 8% increase over the budget, but it's really, instead of 250, it's really 800, so that's drastic.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we've seen it go both ways,
Yes,
it really
does.
stood
It is
out.
an area that fluctuates.
Thank you. Tiny item, what happened with rental income?
We don't have as much as we've had in the past. We had one major firm that used to rent quite regularly, and they ended up building their own facility, so
Oh.
they don't need, and we do use our building quite a bit, so there isn't a lot of free available time for people to rent, but very few applications are turned down at, if we're not using the building, so. But it's just based on historical data and what we've seen.
So we get reimbursed when we send special ed students out, but it's a percentage that, like I think I heard somebody mention the other day, we can ask Hartford all we want, but we never get an answer. Is those, I assume I'm looking on page 15 here. I'm sorry, people at home, we can't display it on the screen. Is it, whatever that percentage is that there somewhere?
The,
The money we get
reimbursement
back,
rate.
whatever percentage, I'll use 72 because I think I've
Right, I
heard
think
about
it's-
in
yeah.
that area code
yeah, it
anyway.
is in that area. It's shown on, the revenue is on page 15.
Right.
It's special ed revenue.
Special ed grants, maybe?
Special ed grants, yeah.
Ah.
It is not at 100%. I think in all the years it's been, I think 1 year the state funded close to
Right.
100%, but it fluctuates, and the unfortunate thing is we never know until really our final payment in May of the budget year that's about to
Correct.
end, what the final reimbursement rate is. And it's based on all the special ed students in the state and their cost.
Okay, good. On page 25, you've made I guess a recommendation to be considered by the Amity Finance Committee. I guess maybe they already have. Regarding using 1% of your operating budget and putting it into a special account. Okay, first of all, I guess since it says September of 2020, that'll be coming up. Can you tell us more about that?
That is the legal statute that allows school districts. Right now, regional school districts are limited to 1%, and traditional K-12 districts have the option of 2% to put aside for capital projects.
Right.
So we put this in here so that if we're at that point and we do have that surplus, and it is, we obviously have a lot of capital needs. We have a 5-year capital plan in here. You can see many items that, to maintain the 3 buildings.
Right.
And it would offset future bonding. So we put this in there so that it would not be a surprise to people should we request to do that in September. It's
In
done at-
September, Terry, that's kind of early in the year, right, usually?
Well, it's
Even
from-
It would be
it's
from
from
the
June.
current year budget.
funds.
Ah,
So
Okay,
that's
I
why
see
you
what you're
wait
saying.
and make sure you
Right.
have the money available.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So that has not yet been addressed, and I see at least it's in September rather than August, which is always I think in my mind, a good thing to see. So, appreciate your answering that, thank you.
So if that's to happen, assuming it does, is there anything in here that can come out?
So it's a good question, but no, because the intent would really be to look at some of those future projects. That there are 2 things that I already primarily have in mind, which would be the roof is set to be bonded in
2022.
2022. And that's about a $1.2 million right now estimate bond, and so we would certainly look at that. The other thing that we're aware of is that the new all-weather field has to get replaced every 10 to 15 years. And so the recommendation is rather than, do that all at once. If you can set aside a small amount of money each year, knowing that it's coming up, then you have that money set aside for when you need to do the replacement. We haven't even put the field in, but we're already thinking about the fact that down the road we know that it has to have that it has to be replaced.
On page 78, if I give people a chance to get there. This is, oh, there's the 2195 number. I'm sorry, maybe I'm using it wrong. It's at the bottom of that page, Terry.
Yes, I'll have to review that.
3.95 was the budget that we're sitting here, that got discussed last Monday at the Community Finance Committee meeting, and I think I sent out a summary to everybody at this team. Woodbridge weighed in, Bethany weighed in, Joe. We said you couldn't weigh in until we discussed it. Jim Zioli made a spoke in public comment. But I'm noticing next year is 5.4% increase. Can you help
The
us?
following year, 21,
Yes,
22.
the next year we have a budget. Now, I see that
5.14.
5.14, yeah, and, which is about $2.5 million, $2.6 million. Without getting into a deep dive, but that's a big number. You know, I can see that debt service goes up 600,000 of that, so there's other,
Yeah, that's the
there's 2
bonding.
million, right, that's probably the increase in bond, right? So, that's a big number, right?
It
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's making assumptions that medical inflation will be, you know, anywhere from 10 to 14%.
11%, I
You
think I
know,
saw you say,
yeah. So we're assuming that. We always hope that it's going to be better than that.
Mhm.
We have contractual increases that will continue to go up.
Right.
So things that you know, the bus contract is currently in negotiations. So
Right.
all of the things that, you know, we try to budget for, the inflation on just the price of things that we buy,
Mhm.
for all the supplies. So we look at each line and try to make our best estimate.
Yeah, and other revenues are not going up, so all of that would come back to taxpayers in the three towns.
Yeah, just with the debt service alone, you're 600 behind.
Yeah, it's a quarter of the 2.6, yeah. Right?
And that's, people approved that, so that's there.
One thing I learned when I went to one of the meetings, let me get to my notes so I'm not guessing at this. PJ, I think you'd be interested in this. Yeah. We in the town of Orange have, John, would you be interested in this? And I don't know if I'm, you know. They have a certain pension over there, it's a little under 14 million. Their return in calendar year 19 was 21%. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm just giving you data since it was at the AFC meeting, it was reported out. 17.5% for sick and severance.
We run July to June, I believe it is.
I think he said calendar year, did he not?
Yeah.
He gives the report on
Yeah.
the calendar year,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the percentage, PJ, is calendar year.
Yeah, that makes sense
Okay,
for a calendar year.
okay. Well, I don't know if it was apples to apples compared to ours, you know.
Until we get ours, I couldn't tell you, but we're running
And their
different
OPEC
6
was
months.
also 19%, so they had 19, they had 17.5 for sick and severance, and 19 for, and they were using 7.5% for their, like, discount rate. For the net of all fees, I think I remember the guy saying, is that,
Yes.
you know it better than I, Terry, so, but
I think-
PJ would be
Do
the
we
guy.
have
I-
the same,
Do you have FIA?
yeah,
Yeah.
we have the same,
Yeah.
we have the same people working for us.
Oh, okay. Well, it could be allocations, but I don't remember seeing,
That's kind of what they
19% when we
do.
were going
Well,
over.
remember again, the year, you're talking about calendar year
calendar
19 in there,
versus
right?
fiscal.
And we were looking at June of
Okay.
19.
Yeah, So, and we were looking at December of 18 where the market took a dive on our last one. So, till we get the new one for this year that includes all, or part of this year where the market was up quite a bit. You're the expert on this.
Well, I mean, but it's still just different periods of time, so you can't compare them. If you compare
Agreed if there are.
July to
Just-
June and
No,
January to
I
December.
know the math, I got it, and you explained it to me actually in the last meeting we had.
Right.
Yeah, that there was a dip.
And I don't even think including the rest of this year is gonna make much of a difference because it's still a different time period.
Okay.
I have a quick question. The board certified behavior analyst, I had to look that up and I had to Google it. It's on page 19.
Yes.
Could you explain that and also why we don't hire one, why we contract for these services?
So a board certified behavior analyst will look specifically at sort of extreme student behaviors, try to determine what the cause of them is, and then work on developing what we call, it's first called a functional behavior analysis. So why are they behaving the way that they're behaving? And then they develop a behavior improvement plan, so strategies and things that we can do to adjust that. And it's for really extreme behaviors, kids who flee, kids who hit, bite, punch, that type of thing. We also use it for students who are school refusal, so who just won't get out of their home. Part of the reason why we don't hire one in-house is because the regulations around BCBAs is that they have to have a certain number of, to be certified, they have to have a certain number of hours with working with other BCBAs under supervision from other BCBAs, sort of more senior ones. And so the challenge is, as a single entity, it just doesn't work. We have had discussions, particularly the special education directors of the 4 towns, of if we could somehow look at a potential model where because we're all using them, where if we started to hire them in-house, if we couldn't create kind of our own community of BCBAs. It's also one of the highest demand positions around, and so I know that one of our elementary districts has hired and lost 2 in this current school year to higher paying positions in other school districts. So for right now, we are contracting out for that service.
I noticed when I Googled it that there were a lot of educational opportunities, so you also are potentially losing staff who are going on to be certified, I would assume, as well.
Indeed.
But it is a big amount. $154,000 is a
Yes.
lot of money.
Yes,
Okay, thank you, though.
you're welcome.
I have a quick question. The capital, the 1% capital fund that
Yes.
we're talking about? If we go back to page 78, when we're looking at the future projections, the forecasts, is that factored in there anywhere?
No,
No.
No.
no, it's not assumed that it will
Okay.
happen.
Yeah, because we have to have it approved, so,
Okay, just checking.
yep.
But it could lower the forecast in the future if we put it aside and not have to
So the
include some of those
495
capital
on-
items in the budget.
The 495,000, which is estimated at 1%. You're not thinking of putting that into a budget in future years?
Well, we don't know that. We've had it. We've returned, what is it, close to, I mean, every year we've had a surplus. We've had selectmen come and ask for the money back, so we return it. So at this point, we can't anticipate that we would be keeping our 1%, when historically we've been returning it back to the towns.
The person who preceded you in the position of superintendent went out to the 3 towns a few years ago and asked all of the 3 towns' Board of Finances what our opinion was and recommendation for the use of surplus. All right, I sent out a form letter to everybody here about 3 years ago, maybe 4, and the number 1 answer and the number 2 answer probably were both return the money to the towns. So I just wanted to let you know, the person before you asked us our opinion. We gave it very strongly. We did it in a formal process. I think that was before you passed, perhaps. And I just wanted to make sure everybody, including the people at home, were aware of that. But that was supported by the selectmen in this town, I know. So,
So, but that's why we can't
But
anticipate
in
it
the
offsetting.
the year that just passed, there was some security things were done with the surplus too.
Yeah.
And everybody was in favor of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's before the end of the year.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pre-surplus use of the funds, yeah.
Right, well,
Yes.
you knew the money was there in a surplus and you
You
used it.
assumed.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We didn't have the final one,
Right.
we assumed a certain.
yeah, I would define a surplus is if it wasn't in the budget and it didn't, if you spent it and it wasn't in the budget, that money should have, say, 400,000, for example, I don't know what the number is, right? That was for a good and just reason. Everybody's, whatever, signed off. That still is part of the surplus of the budget, from the budget, mathematically, right? Just so our definitions are straight. All right, Kip?
If I could circle back to the enrollment
Yes.
question, because my fiscal years have lined up in my head now. So the 22-17 slide is the enrollment October 1, 2019.
Correct.
The current ADM, which what next year's allocations
Right.
are based on. Yes, the enrollment, if I just look at the enrollment and move students ahead, very rudimentary, not
the way I
assuming,
used to do
it
it,
goes to 2195 next year.
And that's our best estimate
That's
now.
our best estimate. It's not always what we see. We typically see 20 new people come in over the summer, but just
Can happen. There's
it lined up.
A lot of families going to Woodbridge, I know,
Yeah.
with kids. And that's reflective in your,
and we want that.
I think that's projected when you look at the percentages going forward. It isn't a one-year gig over there in
Yes.
Woodbridge. All right, if I got my percentages from someone sent me an email or whatever.
Yeah, all the resales came into my community in Fieldstone, so that's why you got all the kids.
So. Okay.
Anyone?
I have some general comments I'd like to present, and I can send this information to everybody who wants it afterwards. But I do know that I have a very different perspective on this chart that was presented. And I'll get back to it, but essentially it's looking at what the percentage increases were in the last couple of years. But we'll get to that in due course. If I could get out of this. There we go. Okay. So, Terry, you're well aware, and Jen, that I asked for some information over. I've been doing this now since 2005. All right, I was Joe's position there for a while, and so I asked for some historical data, and basically I'll have about 6 charts to show you. Before I show you those 6 charts, I'm going to remind everybody who might be watching, including people on this committee and all. This is our job, you know. We have growing requests for town services. We have infrastructure needs in our town. We have public safety, community health, all that. Maintain our commitment to our schools and adapting to state budget cuts. And we do this primarily with town taxes, just like you have town, most of your money comes from the towns, right? And that goes residential and commercial. And the last year we had, it was 93, almost 94% was that. So we come up with this little gizmo of doing more with less. We have a little picture of Sherlock Holmes kind of checking out money, which usually translates to asking questions, right? And we have, we talk about it as an item worth remembering, but it's, you know, compound interest is a magical thing, 8th wonder of the world, according to Einstein. But if you just took $100 and flattened it out over 10 years, and you said, okay, oh, 1%, that's not a big deal. 4%. Now, I've been using this chart. I didn't make this chart up for tonight. We've been using this chart for a number of years.
A decade.
All right? And you can see what happens at 4%, you're at $148, all right? And at 1%, you're at $110.50. So it makes a big deal, all right? 1 percentage point as you increase up this ladder. So the more you can get people to slide down, the more you're doing more with less. That's where the creative act is, all right, for us, and that's part of our job. One of the benefits of doing this is getting things like AAA credit ratings, and this is a slide that we used in last year's town budget presentation. I think almost everybody in the room was at that one, so I won't be going down. But the net result is, when you get these credit ratings, is a major decrease in your bond interest rate, which also translates over to Amity, since we're at 50% basically of the support of Amity. All right, so it has a trickle-down effect as well. Okay. So here's what the data I asked. I created this little template, the budget, the surplus, the number of students, the number of FTEs. Terry got it back to me same day, I think. And I thank Terry for that. Terry, I took the yellow out just so that I wouldn't have any distractions for this purpose. We could talk about what that means. All right? Now, I'm just going by the data. All right? So, what's happened to the number of students? This is the comment I made, Jen, that you weren't here a number of years ago. But if you can go back to 2009, 2010, we were at a height of 2549, according to the data that I got from Terry. All right? And it, right now, and this is where I use the 2195, Terry, and whatever. There's been a decrease. Is it leveling off? Is it going to go back up? We'll see. All right? But that's the historical data. All right? So it's been a 13.9% decrease from that height, all right, all the way for what we project for next year. It's just, that's the data. It is what it is. Second thing, again, the data that Terry gave me was what was the number of FTEs, full-time equivalents, people, all right, that support the Amity budget and operations. You do not have the figure for next year, because that hasn't been, I guess that's why we left it blank, but in any event. So it's about a 4% increase if the math's been done right, and since I did it, I'll take ownership of it. But regardless, that's the data, all right? So you've had students coming down, full-time equivalents going up. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean teachers. As a matter of fact, when I was talking to John Belfonte about this, he mentioned, I think, 190 teachers. There's 183. There's support staff in there. There's all kinds of reasons, right? But this is the data, all right? So this is the actual data. So what you have here, if you just divide it out, and again, you can see the height. It was back, how many FTEs you have per student. Take the number of students, divide by the FTEs, and this is what you get. It just is what it is, all right? That there has been a decrease, which makes sense, because our students been going down, our FTE's been going up, all right? So you would expect this, okay? And the lowest that Excel gave me was 2 years ago, or 18-19, where it was down to 6.8. Doesn't have any magical meaning for so therefore, it just is the data, all right? It is the data. Okay, budget increases. If you take that Excel sheet and you put in another column and you take one and subtract the other, you get an increase, right? And then you flip it over the other one, and then Excel gives you these percentages. So as you can see, what I've done here is just plot those percentages. We don't have one for next year because it's TBD. We know what the proposal is, okay? But the average is 2.38. Okay, Joe? All right. So I put a little red line there so everybody could see the average, or close enough anyway, and that's been the budget increase. And you could see, just like Dr. Byers, you can see the same percentage increases during the last 4 years that you identified on your charts as well. All right, so we're obviously, if it's the math, it's the math. I mean, it isn't going to change. Surplus. This is a view. We don't have a surplus for this current year yet, so that's not on the charts yet. But this is the data for the surplus on the budget. So one of the things I want to point out is that even though in the last couple years we've had a 1%, not quite even 2% increase in the budget, we have had sizable surpluses. The average over the entire, whatever number of 14 or so years, has been 1,389,422. So says Excel. Okay? And again, it's just the data. It's the data that Terry gave me. All right, I just did a little manipulation. I sent it out to you guys so you guys could do it too, and probably have. All right? So we've had a 2.38% increase, and we've had these surpluses in that increase. So what I did, and I'll just kind of walk you through, it's a little bit of an eye test, but you have the same years across the bottom from 2005, right? I actually had to start with 2006 because I didn't have 2004's budget, so I couldn't get the increase, so I left that off. But what you have here is you have the budget increase. So for example, if over Kevin said on the left there, if you had a budget increase back in that first year of 2.1 million, to make it quick, you can see that there was not that much of a surplus money. Now, if you come down to the 18, 19, the one furthest to the right, you notice something very interesting, in my mind. That we have asked for an increase, that 1% increase, a little over 1%, not quite 2%. We could go back to what the number is. It's on the prior page. And that amount of money was $587,000, the increase. Now, I've been in these meetings for 15 years, and, you know, everybody's fighting for the share of their pie and have their positions, and we'll all go home and sleep at night and remain friends. We got to be. It's a community. But a lot of times I would hear, gee, if we cut this anymore, we're at the bone. And yet we came up with, in that year, over $2 million surplus. Was that an aberration? Well, let's look to the one to the left. $603,000 was the increase. $3 million surplus. The one to the left of that, $933,000 increase. We had 1.79, almost 1.8 million surplus. Okay? So what this is clearly telling me, in those last 10 years, the orange, the surplus, was greater than the increase to the budget in 9 of 10 years. And the only one which is different was right over there. You can see it, where the surplus, I don't have my pen in here, was the increase was 1,569 and the surplus was 1,448. So they're only off by a little bit, Joe. You know what I mean? So that's history. All right? Doesn't mean anything necessarily for the future, but it's been very consistent. All right? We've had a lot of discussions about this as well. So that's some data that has to be in the mix. Now, the final point I want to make, besides the basic data and the budget increase to surplus, is the following. There's two ways of looking at budget increases. Up at the top, you can see you can look at it budget to budget, and you could see it look at what was the actual spent in the prior period, and what does that compare to the proposed budget in the next year. Now, in that box in the middle is a slide that I think everybody saw, because I think I used this last year at the town budget hearing. And how you read this, let's kind of walk through what we're seeing here. As you could see on the left, that green was the budget amount, but the amount spent was only 45.3. So we had the 3.2 million. That's the 3.2 million that we had as a surplus that year. Now, these are my cartoons, so they're not tried to be drawn to scale. I'm trying to explain. So you can see that the green to the green in the second column was 49 million, or 487,000 was actually the increase, only 1.2%. But if you do it from what actually was spent in that prior year, it goes from 45.3 million up to 49 million, which would be an 8.2% increase. A big difference as you look at budget assessments, okay? So the other one, the rest of that slide just tries to do the same thing for the projection of where we were going last year. So I'm just trying to get to the point that we appreciate the difference between, when you look at budget increases, there are two types. One was you look from budget to budget, and you look at what did you actually spend. We actually spent, in that case, 45.3 million, and when you compare that to what you're proposing, it's a very big difference. Now, which isn't to say This isn't good and just reasons. I'm just saying that there's a different way of looking at budgets, okay? Final point, this slide. When you do that analysis over the last years, 14 years, and you come in with, well, let's just take the last couple of years. And those are rounded, so that you get 1 point and whatever, all right? The budget increases. And you can see that when you compare actuals to budget, you get a very different perspective of the world. And in many businesses, that's how you budget. You budget from your actuals to your budget. You don't budget from your budget to your budget. Now, I'm not going to get into a big discussion of it, but this is the data that would say that clearly the increases from actual to budget, the orange, are almost double over the period, average, right? 2.38, Pat. All right, Joe, 3.54, right? And there's the distribution over the years, okay? So I did all the calculations, so if they're goofed up, you can blame me. It's all good. All right, but I just wanted to share that that's a perspective. And that's why I asked for the data. And I took the data and then spent actually more time than my Excel teacher would like to admit, but on trying to understand it and be able to communicate that. So, Mr. Chairman, or Dr. Byers and Mr. Chairman, that's the material I've put together from the data that was sent to me.
Thank you. Anyone on that? The only thing I'd go back to, and this is just, as I was thinking, the 495 capital you want to set aside, I think that's a good idea. Don't set it aside for the new field. Personal preference. Everybody in this room is now voted for and is paying for that bond that's paying for them. If you're using that money to replace the future fields, we're paying for it twice. Use it for something else. That's just my opinion. You know, there's other repairs, I get saving money and that's a good thing, but not for the same item that we're currently just gonna pay for over the next 10 or 15. But that's my 2 cents.
Good point, that's a good
So-
point. Yeah.
Kev? You good on the
Anyone have any other-
Amity?
I know you gotta have a tough road from all the selectmen and everything else, so obviously we'd like to see it come down, but there's a lot of work and you have a lot of hand-holding to do with, or whatever's going on with the 3 towns, so. But I appreciate and I thank you for coming and presenting. Anybody have any other questions for Dr. Byers? No, and thank you, Terry.
All right, good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
You want to take a couple minutes, Kev?
Yeah. That sounds good. Can we take, is there a motion to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, let's do that. I think that's what I mentioned.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
And continuing with our agenda item for the Amity budget is possible vote on the 2021 Amity budget for our Amity Finance Committee member, as we've done in the past, so.
I'd like to start if you don't mind.
Go, Jim. Take it.
What I heard the other night from the selectmen of Orange, as a matter of fact, I sent you guys an email, so I'm going to fire that up as I talk, and we could have something on the screen at least. So I attended the meeting. You can see it's 3.95 or whatever the latest reduction. I think I took some notes. 3.79, I think it is now. There was a significant amount of feedback from the town to reduce this increase. I put it in the order, how it happened in the room, and Joe chime in. Jim Zioli spoke in public comment, and I thought he was pretty eloquent, frankly, about the need to get the increase down to like 2.5 or 2%. And he mentioned, these mandates from the towns to have spending increases of less than whatever, 2.5 or 2, but we have our own issues, regardless of state mandates. And Jimmy is expressing big concerns of residents about the need to control spending. Matt Giglietti, who's the Board of Finance rep from Woodbridge, spoke multiple times. He was, the increase that they are projecting for Woodbridge and the current 3.95% increase in the budget would impact Woodbridge 6.81%. Over $1 million. And Kevin, I think you had educated us that the entire increase in Woodbridge last year was
$800,000.
800,000. So you can see what it would feel like from a Woodbridge perspective. John Grabowski, the AFC rep from Bethany, also spoke. I think I heard from you, Joe, he wanted down to 0% or something like that. But he said, 2% no more, okay? So in the past, and they had a set of budget reductions, they call them tiers. I don't think we have to get into the details here, but you guys have them, of what might get you down into that area code of that 2 to 2.25-ish budget increase, where they are at 3.79 or 3.95 now. Prior years, for those who don't know, who might be watching, we set a percentage increase that we would support for a budget for Amity. I think last year, Kevin, was it 1%?
Was it 2 last year?
It was less than 2. I
Less
think we
than
were at
1.99.
1.99. Yeah.
No, I don't think that was last year, but anyway, we set a number, and if then we won't support it. How much we don't support it, it's a back and forth, and we just leave it at that. I would like us to, before we leave tonight, to do that same thing. I would like to propose that after we have full discussion, I'm going to propose that we do it in the following 2-tier way. Number one, come up with a number, all right? And I'm gonna start off with an idea of 2.2. And depending on events, that if we don't meet again, Kevin would have authorization to change that number up to another limit. I'm gonna give you another percentage, 2.4. In other words, put an upper bound on it. Because we are likely not to be meeting between now and the 24th of February.
And we are meeting on the 24th, so.
But it's after their meeting,
yeah.
so, I don't want to put Joe in a guessing game. We close enough, that kind of thing. So that's the framework I'm bringing to the table for us to talk about and get everybody's thoughts. Kevin, why don't we start with you?
I agree. Like we did last year, I thought that was the number that we threw out. I think that was the number we were comfortable with.
Oh, yep.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think last year when we discussed that, that was a number that we agreed on, and without, in other words, it gave Amity opportunities to take things out without, drawing blood, so to speak. They may think so, but, realistically, I think that was a good number. And I would, your suggestion this year is in line with that, and I would agree with that.
2.2 in the block, you were in the area code, zip code?
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like to see it more, but it seems like a fair number. And if you said, circumstances dictate that we go to 2.4, I would prefer the 2.2, but, I will
So you
go-
would give that flexibility to
Yes, sir.
Kevin, too?
Yep.
Okay. PJ?
I would tend to agree. I haven't had a lot of time to look over all the information.
Yeah.
Just looking at some of the documents that were provided, maybe the range be a little wider, maybe 2.6 to 2.2 in that range, give them a little flexibility.
That would give Kevin a little more flexibility. Okay? Okay. Pat?
I have difficulty with the flexibility concept. It's like negotiating with yourself. Either it's 2.2 or it's 2.6. If we say 2.6, it's going to be 2.6. I think we should come up with a number and say this is it.
Well-
I think we're giving them, if we say 2.2 but no more than 2.6, it sounds to me, if I were
Oh.
listening to this, I'd say, all right, so let me aim for 2.6.
Let me give you another idea, and a part of me agrees with what I thought was your initial position, but it turns out to be. The 2 point, I'll stay with 4 since that's what he said.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just throwing out numbers. I just,
Okay.
having the two numbers, one lower and one higher, human nature, budgeting nature, whatever nature, is to go to the higher,
Well, let me just
the higher
defend what
number.
I was thinking with that before you
Please?
comment, Jim. We're talking about all hypotheticals here, so we're cutting, we're asking them to cut things, and we don't know, number one, what they're cutting, and number two, what the impact will be. So if we were here saying, they were saying, here's what we're proposing to cut, and here's the impact, the potential impact, I think that's a lot easier to make a decision than just hypothetical numbers, which we're discussing right now.
Well, that's why I sent out the attachment, so you could see.
Right, and I haven't,
Okay, that's fair.
that was what I led with.
And that's a proposal, and they're good people. Terry, they've done a great job over the years. Jack Levine saved a lot of money, did a lot of hard work. But we know, it's like when all of a sudden you're gonna cut the sports team. The things that are on lists are shock value a lot of times and not necessarily what will be reduced. So that's my take.
A point of information, Pat,
Excuse me.
I'm gonna go back to the 2.2 and 2.4. We would not tell them, we would give them one number. Between now and the 24th, if for whatever reason, the chairman of this board decided to change the number from what we agreed to, 2.2, if we did that, he could change it up to 2.4 and give Joe the authorization if Kevin.
And that
tells-
hypothetical would be if they were to whittle it down and they capped at 2.4, that we might turn around and say, we will support that.
Just,
But if they
that
cut-
was my point. I wasn't giving them a range.
Okay, so it's not a range for them, it's a.
Flexibility for
It's a
Kevin.
flexibility for Kevin, then I'm okay with that.
Joe?
2.426, go to 2.5, and that's the upper end. That's what I would say, 2.5 or less.
Would you give that flexibility to
Jim
Kevin?
Yes, Jim Zioli mentioned they talked about 2.2 was a goal that we had discussed on Monday. I mean, I would allow them to go up to 2.5 with a yes vote from us. And because it sounds like they're gonna have a hard time getting down to that number without making some programmatic cuts, potentially, based on these tiers.
And I still think that 495 that we know they're gonna have can be used for other repairs
There
and
will be a
stuff, that's
surplus
it.
this year as well. May not
And
be
we
as
don't
high
have
as
any
it
purview
was.
over that, like, we agreed with them spending the money on security out of last year's surplus, but they could do it anyway, that's their vote.
Right.
They can't take more than a percent for the capital, but they could spend it on other things before year end on a vote of their boards. So there's some things, and that's an awful lot of money to knock
$500,000.
this increase
Yeah, yeah.
down on whether it be the textbook, certain other items that they could buy ahead of time. It can be done.
And yet, the SROs are a point of contention as well. She told me earlier that it's becoming emotional with parents.
Oh, sure.
And so they may not be able to cut that so easily.
But
Matt
again,
recommended it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Again, I agree, but when Jim had,
Right, there's
there's
this
this
right
chart.
here. This
Right,
chart,
right.
This chart, Dr.
mean,
Brady
Right.
you know.
14,
got rid of
15.
the SRO at the high school because they didn't have the money, and the 3 towns said, we want the SRO there, so we all paid it separately. And they had the money.
Yeah, no, yeah, the money.
It's been troubling, and, I've been a lone soldier on some of this journey for, like, what's it now, 15 years? And, every year, everything makes logical sense, right? We need the money, the kids, we need, and then that happens.
And we're still topping the
And,
state too, topping the nation.
Right.
Right.
I'm
And-
hands on. Okay.
And so I'm trying to find that balance, but hey, man, that's not a one-timer, right? That's 9 out of the last 10, and I'm talking that the surplus was larger than the increase that they had to have, and each year, and I'm just like,
And the quality of the programming continues.
there's a
to
little
stay
bit of a
absolutely.
come on,
They-
man.
They do a
here.
great
Top
job.
tier.
They do, and it just shows, it's not, it's they do keep a tight eye on things, otherwise this wouldn't have
They
happened.
probably have some room to increase class
And-
sizes a
and-
little bit too. No one has gone there at all yet, but there's probably a little room to jump that up without jeopardizing quality, which we really haven't even discussed.
Well, that's their job. I mean, we're
We
not
don't
gonna
need to
all of
tell-
a sudden
right,
become
we're- no,
educators and
no.
do, that's their job.
No,
I
it's their
mean,
job. We give them the numbers, let them figure it out.
so,
I would be okay with 2.5 to give us flexibility on an approval.
So we're gonna tell them 2.2.
Okay.
Right.
And go up to 2.5 with.
Kevin-
We're not telling them that.
No, tell them 2.2.
We're
Well,
on
they're gonna know,
TV.
we're on TV.
but we're not telling them that. No, it's serious.
We
It's
want
serious. It is
2.2.
2.2 unless you and your own judgment, and you can get feedback from us, and you can let
Yeah.
us know for sure. But I just don't know if how we do so my motion would be 2.2 with chairman flexibility to raise it as he sees fit, but no higher than 2.5.
Yeah.
That would be the kind of motion.
That's a good motion.
That sounds.
So that gets you 2.5 in, Joe.
2.5, yeah.
So with their cuts that they have on their list, wherever else they go with them, whether it's this set of cuts, some other, and it wasn't like we're out on the streets,
Well,
if they don't abide by
Simple.
it, they haven't abide by it, but we're stating our opinion, and in
And
some
we've had
point,
first selectmen who went against it, our board went different ways, but having been here for an awful long time, there were years back then when Dr. Brady, I believe it was Dr. Brady, in their budget, we'd have to go back, I don't know how many years, but they did use, instead of refunding the money, they applied it to the following year budget. There's $495,000 right there. Not telling them to do it, but they can figure it
The
out.
money's there, yeah.
yeah, and it's kind of, we can't take a vote on it, but how we behave when it happens next September, their surplus is what, 410 now? Yeah, and usually has the hockey stick at the end of the year, maybe not last year, but historically it certainly has been that way. So we'll see. And just like when they'll come up with the special ed, what happens? It could be $750 million, as justification for very big budget surpluses. At some point, like have mentioned to you guys, I can remember the day. Well, there's the data. The yellow back in the day when I was in your position, Joe, you can see those were well under $1 million, except for the 2009 and 2010, it went up to $1,075,000 there. Okay, but since that time, it's we only have a 1% budget increase. Well, hello, So I'll make. Are you guys ready for a motion?
Yeah,
John?
absolutely ready.
Can I
Please.
just say something before you vote, and just to make you keep this in mind? That SRO officer that she has in the budget, I don't believe Chief Gagne's carrying it in his budget.
There's not.
That officer.
I don't think we
that
have
he-
that officer, and I think that would have to be an SRO with special
Well,
training.
it's-
They wouldn't
well-
even have him for another year.
They've
There's-
talked to
gotta
him
go through
about
the
it.
academy,
and
yes.
Bob and I gave him that price back months ago.
Yeah.
But he would probably take one of his veteran officers, is what he told me. He's got 3 of them that are trained, I think, in that, the ones that do the DARE in the schools. But he would need another officer to replace that in his budget outside of the one he's asking for. Just
But
keep
we
that-
wouldn't really need it technically in his budget, because they're gonna pay us the 130.
Are they gonna pay us, or they're gonna pay? I
If
don't
it's in their
know.
budget.
Yeah, they're
I don't know,
paying
that's
us.
I
Yeah.
don't know how that's gonna work.
But if,
just keep
I
that in
think that
mind.
Okay.
it'd be easier to try to find a retired state policeman. It would be less cost.
I don't even know what they're doing up in Bethany, because Bethany doesn't have a police department.
Right.
And you see a big.
Yeah, I had a
difference in
private
price
conversation.
there.
I'd like to remain that way, but the number was explained, why it's less. Yeah.
The other thing, just to remind you, in our current budget, we have, I believe it's $500,000 in revenue from Amity, from their surplus
Yep.
from
Yes.
last year.
Understood.
If there's only 400 in their current budget.
Oh, yeah, that
talking
number's
about
gonna
it.
No, we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to put
I
that
just
down to.
want to make.
Thank you.
all have that in
Kevin
mind.
mentioned that
Yeah,
to
I
me
say
in
we
the
just
last,
put 20,
some one of the
put a
meetings in the
small
last
number
few
there just
days.
to keep the line item open, but it's not gonna be what it's been in the past, and we
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah, so, and that
So-
has implications all over.
I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
all
We live this stuff.
February is a live this stuff month, I'll tell you that. Boy,
No,
let
no,
me
I
tell you.
appreciate it. Thank,
My kitchen is becoming Grand Central Station. Okay.
Let's get back to a motion.
I will. The motion is, the Board of Finance I make the motion that we would support an Amity budget increase of up to 2.2% for the fiscal year 2021, I believe it is. All right. That statement, and, or if we want to have it, John, in one full sentence, with the proviso that the chairman could raise that to, what did we say, 2.5% increase if he so chooses. This budget, that's the end of the motion, so, by the way, they're meeting on the 24th, and Joe, that would
We're
give
gonna look for
you.
a vote at that time as well,
Yes.
so.
From,
All right, so there's a motion, is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
Second by Pat, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed, abstained, unanimous?
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, item number 5, budget discussion for 2021 fiscal year. John, is there anything we wanted to go into, or
No,
wait till
I
the
gave you
24th?
some updates tonight on the
Yes.
library and.
The library?
I believe the police department. There were a couple of things that I
Could you
saw when
highlight-
We went through the all-day meeting.
Which one changed in the library, John?
I believe it was one of the salary line items. There was,
I can get it,
they
I can
had
fire it up,
they-
hold on.
I had only picked up the first year of their contract, and it really needed to be the second year. So that's done. We're working, Art and I have worked on the revenue. We'll probably send that out to you, if not next week, before our next meeting.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Currently working on the health insurance, and I did have a discussion with our property insurance people today, so I should have numbers for you for the next meeting on that.
John, I have the library one up there, I have the copy that you gave us, okay?
Did I send you a new copy?
No, not a new electronic copy, but now
I
we have
will.
the, this is what we did at the workshop. We have in front of us the new one, so,
Check that 536 against what I gave you. I think it was in that line, in that area up there.
okay, no, this is the same. Oh, maybe, did you send me this new one?
I thought I had.
Okay, so
I
this would be, this is the same as I have on my sheet
All right, that's
that
good.
you handed out, okay? So what changed in the police general service then? And then that's, police, this one, right? So this is what, 100? Oh, yeah, you sent me, that was the one file that I didn't have on our workshop day, if I remember right. So let's see what happens here. 452,
That 11% up in the top there, I think it was utility clerk changed.
utility clerk,
I had
39.
I had too many hours, I believe, in there.
Oh, you know what it was? I think you had some bad formula over here.
I think I had that too, but I had a wrong number in there.
Well-
That person only works, I think, 35 hours, and I had him at 40.
Oh, so
there
you
was-
probably sent, this is the one I didn't have for the whole day, and you probably had updated it and then sent me this file.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so these go in our budget books?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And you're working on, we now have, overall town budget. So we have in our budget books in the front part, the budget summary by department, which may or may not be the latest, but it's, you know,
It's
it's
close
close,
enough right
close
now.
enough. You sent us the mill rate one, and you're working on the revenue one.
I could give you a number for the revenue now.
No, I don't.
That's-
Let's wait
no,
until we
no,
have.
that's-
Okay.
I don't
You guys
want
work
to,
on it.
I'll
verbal,
give you night.
it's
Yeah.
really hard to edit here, you know, so let's just, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, okay,
All right.
all right, so that's,
that.
what I've got there,
All
okay.
right, so item 6, discussion and approval of minutes from January 27th, 2020.
27th, there it is, there. John, you're usually batting lead off.
I'll start off. Okay, we're gonna start very top at the staff with guests. Let's make it Michelle Wilkes. Let's take out the.
Are we gonna take out our last name?
Bovair.
Take-
Oh, yeah, you'll see that word, Bovair, more than once.
Yeah, all over, please, make
She
that
said she wanted to
correction.
keep it.
John's got her covered.
Yeah, and then, okay, let's go under 3, audit presentation. The second line there where it says 2 managers' letters, should be 2 management letters.
The second line. Why am I missing that, John?
Yeah.
Oh, Ms. Bover, so we have to change that one there, right?
Yeah.
And,
She's gonna change that throughout.
okay, yeah, she goes
And then
global.
2 management letters on the second line there.
Second bullet, you mean?
No,
No, under 3.
first bullet, under 3.
Oh, okay, so that'll be 2 management letters, thank you. Good, good.
Okay, on page 2. Okay, we're under number 4, at the very end, where I suggested that in light of the fact that minimum wage has increased, the fees for summer camp should be increased. It should be summer camp and many programs. Summer camp including many programs should be increased. And again, that's because of minimum wage right here.
Okay,
Summer camp be in many programs. Okay. Page 3, I had nothing. And page 4, I only had Deb's signature, so I'm good after that.
okay, we just have another Bover up in here.
Yeah, we'll get rid of all
Get
of them
'em all.
with the word search.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone else?
I have nothing in the whole first document.
Is there a motion
Good
to
catch there, John.
accept as amended?
So moved.
Motion
I'll
by
second it.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, unanimous. Thank you. Okay. February 7th, 2020. That was our all-day meeting.
Okay.
So.
And Deb did a great job on these. She got them right back out to us.
Yeah.
so, like, it's still in our mind. Okay, under number 1, where it starts with the sentence in the middle of that first paragraph, car number 17 was totaled after hitting a street pole. That should be a telephone pole.
Whoa, very strong.
Aren't they the same?
I mean, this is the
I think
varsity,
it's
right
I
here.
think of
Good job, that's what he said.
Telephone poles are in the street.
I would have spelled totaled with 2 L's. I'm really
then-
so happy
and
with
then-
this. Totaled.
making a request for 2.5 vehicles. Well, you really can't have 2.5 vehicles. He's really making a request for 3 vehicles, which includes one to replace the totaled auto.
Which we're gonna get some insurance for, so
Yeah,
that's
we
what.
already,
where the
we
half-
already
The
actually
cost is
got it.
2.5, so it's
We
right.
actually got it.
Yeah, yeah.
A little smart car would do it.
Page 2.
All right.
Okay, on the first paragraph there, where Chief Gagnon added that Attorney Elliot Spector handled all the police certifications in Connecticut, he actually said police training, and that was for police officers coming from out of state into Connecticut.
Okay,
That was it on that page.
all right.
Page 3. Oh, first paragraph. There will be charges at the transfer station for construction debris and disposable tires. That should be possibly in the future. Actually, the Board of Selectmen passed last night the idea to
Probably,
charge for
possibly in the future,
construction.
probably should start Deb at the front of the
Right.
sentence.
Yeah,
Potentially, there
Yeah,
would be.
possibly in the future, there will be charges, yeah, that sounds
And they
like
approved it last night?
reads better.
They approved
Well, we
the-
can't, you don't change the minute, but that's,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
That's
That's
good.
good.
not for the tires, for the other stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Starting on July 1st.
Great.
So get those old tires down there before.
Do all your renovations.
Yeah, there you go. Spring cleaning this year for the
Number
town of
5, under Pat O'Sullivan. I would just say, Mr. Cifarelli felt that this was a difficult job that may need a salary increase in the future.
Leave out the political.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
May need, okay. All right.
Registrar of voters, right?
And
Say
that's all-
register, registrar.
Yeah.
and that's all-
Registrar.
That's all I have.
Oh, good catch, Joey.
Hey, yeah.
Same paragraph,
Registrar,
Second
under
line.
town clerk, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
In the registrar of voters office.
Excuse me.
Oh, just one other thing, since we're talking about registrars. Fred did come to me today, and with all the referendums that are coming down the road, Amity, Orange, I guess there's a presidential one, and
Oh, yeah, there's a primary.
so
Primary coming
he's thinking they may be short a little money, so I said, figure it out and give me a memo, and I may present it to you at our next meeting for
good.
some funds.
When is the primary in Connecticut?
I think it's April 29th or something, somewhere there. yeah.
Late April.
Okay, that reminds me, I'm gonna get my calendar up here in a minute.
That's all I have.
Okay, I got a couple. Anybody else got some, jump in.
No, go ahead,
Not a
sir.
lot. Page 2. Paul Mangello, Director of Section 3, second paragraph. I thought for sure he said 39 open orders.
30 is what I remember. Where's the
What
number?
page?
Fourth line, third line of 4 on the left.
Yeah, I remember 30.
Okay, all good, done, sold.
I mean, my memory might not be the best, but I do remember.
No, I remember,
That's
for
the
some
weekend,
reason, I
it's
said to
okay.
myself, you know, because you know how my brain works. If someone says a round number, I just look at them a little funny, you know. It's always, you know, it's like someone says they
Throw
get a
4%
job done by the
goes,
end of the
you know,
month,
It was-
forget it, they
it
don't
was
have a
30.
plan, you know.
I remember. 30.
End of the month, it's the
You
second.
know, I mean, either that or they could get it done yesterday, one of the two. Okay, anyway. Next page, section 6, I circled, no, oh, wait a minute, top of the page. First line, Mr. Cifarelli noted that while recycling is a mandatory state statute,
Oh, yeah.
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 Jim, I never could spell, so I don't.
That's why you're an
What happens
accountant.
with me,
Yeah,
I'm
we do
such a
math.
bad
We-
typist.
I can't write, I can't
I
spell.
type in the word, but I miss a couple letters, and it gives you a good word, so you don't
Yeah.
even know it. And,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
And you're editing your own stuff,
my-
and you're hustling
my-
out the door, it's not a good combination.
Yeah, my iPad doesn't do that, my phone does, it corrects words.
phone-
for me.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a two-edged sword.
It is.
Second bullet under number 5, the last sentence, which has my name there, displayed the software for all board members. I didn't use my PowerPoint presentation, I used using his computer, I think is right.
Yeah, you clicked on it.
I clicked on it, and we looked at it, I think that's a fair edit.
Right.
Number 6, I circled the second bullet. Third line, I circled truck vendor could pay the town a rental fee. Oh, right. So we're saying the truck vendor could pay the town a rental fee, right here, right? I'm not suggesting an edit in the words,
We did say that.
correct? But then I read the last sentence. Mr. Lynch felt that the Orange Little League would have to decide if this is something that they wanted to consider. So I asked myself, who decides this? If we would want an outside vendor to pay a town rental fee, aren't we the ones? Or maybe, and if we aren't, that's fine. Whose role
Not
and
us, it would be
responsibility?
Park and Rec.
Yeah, Park
I
and
don't
Rec.
know, because when the stand runs, the money from the stand goes to the Little League to help with their
Right.
expenses. If the town, and I don't know by the town, I guess you mean Park and Rec, brought it in, I guess that money would go to the town unless there was an agreement.
Right.
But you'd probably hear squawking from
Yeah,
the Little League
Little
for
League,
it,
yeah.
because you,
But if they're not gonna open the stand,
Correct. That was why the discussion
Yeah.
came up.
Yeah.
They said
Yeah,
there's
right.
only one open now, the other ones don't open
yeah,
anymore.
I don't know, to tell you the truth, I don't know how that would work.
And
That
I
would
don't think
have-
people are walking all the way up the hill to that one if it's the only one open.
Yeah,
If they're
right.
down
Well,
below,
well, usually 2 of them are open, the 2 on the Little League side, the one at the top at Mr. Roach.
Yep.
And the one down Plaskowitz are usually open. The one that isn't open usually is the Babe Ruth one.
That Brindley
And last year, they did open it a few times, not every game, but it was a,
Is it open during Amity games and whatnot? I mean,
It wasn't
Probably
really, it
not,
wasn't
yeah.
really.
I don't know.
So
It
it
was,
might
See,
be.
when-
it was
see, when
open
Mr.
when
D
my
was there, he
nephew
would
played,
open it.
I know
oh, he
that.
was always there.
if 2 people showed up, he would open the stand, and he'd sell them something.
He used to
No,
be able to buy
that's
Budweiser
why-
back then, too.
That's why those are the names up on the fields
Yep.
up there, De
Yep.
Janeiro, Roach, and Brindley.
Friendly. Yep.
Well, as it's written, Mr. Lynch felt that the Orange Little League would have to decide if this was something they wanted to consider. Is that a fair, no, we may disagree. Is that a fair statement? Because I said to myself, who decides this?
But-
I want the money to go back to the town. If they're not doing anything with it and there's an opportunity,
I get that, but if he said that, then that's what has to stay there,
Yeah.
okay.
regardless
You good?
of
Okay.
our opinions. But if Dan
I'm not,
said that,
I'm not sure he quite understand what you were saying, Jim. I think he might have thought you were saying, have the Little League bring it in, and I think he was looking at it from that perspective, not the town.
It seemed to me to
well,
be an
either way,
obvious.
if they're not open, it's not that we want to belabor this
Yeah.
point, but it would be in the interest of everybody to have them, because then they're gonna have, people will be happy, they're gonna spend money, and we're gonna get, we're gonna.
I mean,
Little
I-
League, whoever gets the money is gonna get more than they're getting now. if the
I
stand's
remember
closed.
when those
Right.
stands used to be full-blown open, the Good Humor truck used to come
Oh,
through
yeah.
there, and they
Yeah.
used to throw it out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They used to throw it out because they said they couldn't sell on town property because there were the stands there.
Well, if they're not open?
No, this was
Th-
when
this
they
is
were
when they
open.
Oh, they were open
This
all the
is when
time.
they were open.
Oh,
And
okay.
John was in the upper level of
Well,
Roach
nobody's
Field
gonna
doing
come
all the
with,
scoring.
you know, they're
And
not
you
gonna
were-
fill
and
their
you were
truck
on
if
the
unless they
field
know
doing
they
all
can
the
come in.
hitting.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
And yelling at me for
All
giving
right,
you
so
a
rather than
ear.
the next step, Kevin, what do you wanna do with the minutes? Just
If
leave it
that's
alone?
what was said, then I say we leave it.
Okay. For some reason down below, in the next, number 7, moving on then, the first bullet, that 16% increase in programs, geez, I thought that she had more than a 16. I thought the number had jumped. I don't have my file with me, but I circled that. Anybody got a memory on that one?
No,
Good,
Pat
good.
does.
Oh, she has a presentation, that's right. You got it, Pat?
See if it's in the presentation.
All right,
Move
I'll
on
look
and
and,
I'll look, yeah.
well, I can look, what is this, library?
See if I took notes.
Oh, man, I don't have it there. Violation. Where is her CML library presentation? Here it is. Okay, I thought they had a bunch of program increases. I mean,
Well, it went from
What?
290 to 338.
no, that's 16%, yeah, okay. Asked and answered, as they say.
I just have a change, if you don't mind my
Please.
jumping in
Yeah.
here. It should say on the second bullet, it should be large print books, not larger print books.
Large, all right,
Because that's the,
yeah,
what they call.
okay. Last one I have, Pat, you want it on this page? We might as well get any of yours.
No, that's it.
Okay, good. Last one would be for me, the last page, something about this last sentence. While it was agreed that Amity would have to go to a referendum if they needed additional funds, I think some more words would be better in there. If they needed additional funds beyond the approved budget in that year, I think that makes the rest of the sentence more complete, Deb. The board agreed that the ongoing surpluses over years would have been excessive, all right? So I think adding those few words in there would be a good idea, right at this point.
Could you say it again, Jim?
While it was agreed that Amity would have to go for a referendum if they needed additional funds beyond the approved budget in that year, comma, the board agreed, et cetera.
I would
Good,
say
Deb?
the approved budget for that year,
For that year.
for that year.
Thank you. Good,
I
I had it on my
have a
head.
quick 2.
Sure. Which one, PJ?
Under 9, the Capital Projects Committee.
Good.
I think I'd like to see, if it's not too much trouble, all of the proposed,
The others,
all
Sure,
the projects here, so we just have them for reference.
Yeah.
no problem.
And
So we
then,
did cut him off at the 673, and then Ralph kept talking a little bit. so-
right, but there was still,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
how you could
yeah.
put that, you could make it another bullet, you know, start saying additional projects, were submitted, but not in the, not in the primary recommendation or something like that,
Right,
and then
'cause
list
they were
them
all listed-
similarly?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
okay.
then the second bullet regarding the LoCIP project, there was another LoCIP
There was another
potential,
LoCIP,
I'd like
yeah.
to just see that added there too, that was the, what's it called,
Oh, we have it right here.
the
Yeah, that.
tubes under the, road?
Right, the culverts.
Culverts,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
capital,
Okay,
B2 capital, right here. I don't know, I can look it up.
In that
It
same,
was the culverts.
yeah, converts.
You got it? Okay, good.
In that same description, the bottom one said replace stem pipes. They should be steam pipes,
Stem cells,
I think.
Let's take a look.
Yeah.
How much was that one, Kev?
16.
$225.
Oh, 220, yeah.
Replace
okay.
steam pipes at HPCC, correct? That's what I have on the capital sheet that I sent out to you guys that I created while we were chatting that day.
One more thing, I'm sorry. I'd like to see added, because I know I brought this up, that
Yeah.
I'd like to see opportunity to include some of these projects in bonding, so if we just renovated High Plains, maybe we could have included this, I think I made reference to that during.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, with Peck and High
Yeah.
Plains, just look at the grander scope of the projects.
Okay.
Deb deserves an award for putting up with us all day long that day.
Yeah.
Keeping up good notes.
Fabulous
That's-
job.
See what
Yeah.
you can get, John, when you have Dunkin' Donuts coffee? I mean, rather than a house brand, I mean, you just get Deb right fired up and, it's all good.
Anyone else? So,
This was great.
is there a motion to approve as amended?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Second by
Good,
Kevin.
good.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, unanimous. Item number 7, Mr. Shanley.
I'll remember do motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second by
Joe,
Joe.
no, Joe second.
Joe second.
Joe second, come
All
on,
those in
okay.
favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 9:07.